Cuba demographic analysis. The crude birth rate of Cuba is 10, the crude death rate is 8, and the natural increase rate is 2. Based on the chart shown, I determined that Cuba is currently in the demographic transition stage 3 because the CBR has declined but is still greater than the CDR. The infant mortality rate is 4.2 in Cuba, which is immensely low in comparison to other countries I researched on my chart. China's is 12, India's is 42, and Chad's is 95. The graph to the right shows how low Cuba's infant mortality rate is compared to other Latin American countries. Cuba's IMR is even below Canada's, which is 4.8. The life expectancy in Cuba is 78, which is comparable to the United States, as shown on the bar graph. The IMR and life expectancy of Cubans establishes that most people have overall good health care compared to other places. Over 90.5% of Cuba's population uses improved sanitation, demonstrated by the line graph on the right. It is remarkably easier to access clean drinking water now in Cuba. 100% of births are attended by skilled health personnel, and the obesity rate has decreased to 11%, compared to developing countries like Ethiopia, where only 6% of births are attended by skilled health personnel. Cuba is in a relatively healthy state. The literacy rate for Cubans is 100% for both men and women, proving that Cuba is not only a well-educated country, but both genders are treated equally. The parliament members in Cuba are composed of 49% women and 51% men, which compared to China, the other communist country I charted, only 24% of parliament members are female. The literacy rate is the highest out of all countries on my chart. It surpasses Canada, Greece, Argentina, and China, which all have literacy rates of 99%. The graph shows that Cuba has a higher percentage of high school graduates and completed graduate degrees than the US. Cuba has also upgraded environmental preservation. The carbon emission in Cuba is 10.8 million tons. This number is low compared to China's carbon emission of over 2.5 billion tons. However, it is high compared to developing countries like Chad, which release only 130,000 tons of carbon emission. Cuba has also recovered 31% of their forest cover in the last decade. However, some people believe because the embargo between the US and Cuba has been lifted, an increase in tourism may have serious environmental consequences. Although Cuba is improving their literacy rates, gender equality, health, and environmental preservation, their economy is struggling. Their gross national income per capita is $18,710 US. The chart to the right shows Cuba, which is the gray line, far below the US and Singapore when it comes to GDP per capita. Economically active males above the age of 15 is 64%, and women is 41%, demonstrating the high unemployment rate. The percent living in extreme poverty in urban areas is around 15%. The economy is most likely due to Cuba's policy of isolationism. The image in the bottom left corner shows how many Cubans live today. Recently, President Obama has ended the long-standing embargo between the US and Cuba. Because restrictions have been eased, the Cuban economy is expected to improve from US tourist revenue. Most recent data also shows that Cuba's population is aging. The total fertility rate has decreased to 1.7, which is the same as China. And the migration rate is -2, which means more Cubans are emigrating than immigrating. Because of the low fertility rate and net migration rate, the percentage of people that are ages 0 to 14 has decreased, while the percentage of people over the age of 65 has increased. This will add to Cuba's economic difficulties because the dependency ratio, or the amount of people able to work, will decrease. While Cuba continues to improve favorable social trends like gender equality, health, education, and environmental preservation, it struggles with economic growth as the population ages.